This simply should not be happening in our familiar physical reality. For decades, we have been sending the most advanced, ultra-sensitive instruments into the depths of dark space. But the data obtained by astronomers completely overturns all modern scientific models. Something is happening there that is completely beyond the bounds of normal human understanding. Our flawless scientific picture of the world has just suffered a massive, fatal crack. According to all rigorous calculations, the space surrounding us simply must be bustling with activity. The incredible number of exoplanets discovered is ideally suited for the emergence of biological, intelligent life. Astronomers confidently expected to hear powerful radio signals from thousands of highly advanced alien civilizations. Instead, instruments continuously record an utterly dead, frightening, and unnatural silence. This vacuum bears no resemblance to a simple coincidence or equipment malfunction. We sincerely hoped that there must be other habitable worlds in the universe, but with every new discovery by modern telescopes, the overall situation only worsens. Cold statistics ruthlessly indicate that intelligent beings must certainly exist. However, their complete physical absence in the cosmos is now becoming the greatest mystery. Reality turned out to be completely different from what we had always naively imagined. Early astronomers believed in imminent and very joyful contact with aliens. They sent golden records with our coordinates on distant space probes. People built enormous antennas in the form of giant dishes in deep mountain valleys. The anticipation of the first friendly signal has become part of our modern popular culture. No one expected to encounter such a deaf and impenetrable wall. Every year, our optical and radio-electronic technologies become more and more sophisticated. We have learned to see planets that are many millions of light-years away. Our computers are capable of analyzing simply incredible amounts of data in real time. There are practically no blind spots left for observing space in our galaxy, and it is precisely this perfect visibility that makes the problem of silence even more terrifying. Scientists have developed highly complex algorithms to accurately filter out ordinary natural cosmic noise. The programs easily distinguish the natural radiation of dead stars from artificial, ordered signals. We have learned to unerringly recognize the sounds of pulsars and powerful explosions from distant supernovae. This filtering has worked flawlessly for many decades. But nothing has yet passed through this perfect recognition system. We expected to see a reflection of our own rapid technological development in space. Earth constantly emits a huge amount of electromagnetic waves across all possible frequencies. It was logical to assume that other advanced species do the same. Space was supposed to resemble a noisy room full of lively conversations from different civilizations. Instead, we found ourselves in a completely empty and eerily silent auditorium. This fundamental problem is causing increasing alarm among experts at leading observatories. Physicists are beginning to doubt the basic laws governing the structure of our vast and ancient universe. What we considered an unshakable truth is crumbling under the pressure of new, frightening facts. We are slowly beginning to realize that completely different, harsh rules govern the cosmos. And these hidden rules could prove deadly for all of humanity. The absence of signals is forcing us to completely rethink our views on the future of our species. We can no longer make carefree plans for the easy colonization of distant star systems. Space has not turned out to be an open playground for endless exploration and joyful, grand discoveries. It has become a high-risk zone with utterly unpredictable and grim consequences. Our profound ignorance on this matter is rapidly becoming our greatest weakness. The time has come to honestly face this frightening and cold cosmic reality. We must acknowledge that our old, comforting models of the universe no longer work. The universe hides a secret from us. the unraveling of which could change absolutely everything. This secret is steeped in an existential primal fear of an unknown and infinitely powerful force. And the further we go in our search, the more terrifying this secret becomes. Modern astronomical technology has reached an incredibly high and highly complex level. We have learned to peer into the most distant, dark corners of our vast galaxy. Giant radio telescopes scan the sky around the clock in search of the slightest artificial anomalies. Orbital observatories take stunningly clear images of distant exotic planetary systems. These powerful machines operate without a single glitch or the slightest technical error. By all laws of physics, we live in absolutely ideal and predictable conditions. Millions of rocky, Earth-like planets have formed around old stars. These worlds had an enormous amount of time to develop undisturbed. Over billions of years of evolution, complex technologies were bound to emerge there. Intelligent beings must have begun actively using electromagnetic radio waves for communication. Outer space is an excellent, transparent medium for transmitting any useful information. Radio waves can travel through the cold vacuum over vast interstellar distances without loss. We know perfectly well which specific frequencies are best for communication. Researchers have long tuned their sensitive instruments to precisely these optimal carrier waves. Scientists expected to see a veritable chaos of loud artificial signals on the airwaves. The newest James Webb Telescope has only confirmed our incredibly optimistic mathematical calculations. It has discovered a vast number of exoplanets with conditions potentially suitable for biological life. Some of them are guaranteed to have liquid water and a dense gaseous atmosphere. The basic building blocks for the emergence of civilizations turned out to be incredibly abundant everywhere. The galaxy is literally overflowing with safe places where beings could be living right now. Our Earth-based logic suggested a perfectly understandable and easily predictable scenario for development. More ancient civilizations inevitably build enormous, resource-harvesting megastructures around their stars. Such colossal industrial structures must leave a noticeable thermal and bright optical signature. Their regular radio transmissions must penetrate cosmic dust and dense interstellar gas. We were completely and unconditionally confident in the reliability of this simple scientific approach. Extraterrestrial intelligence search programs had been operating steadily for decades with full government funding. The world's best computers continuously analyzed vast terabytes of raw data from space. Special algorithms can easily and quickly distinguish the noise of a wild pulsar from an artificial beacon. The filtering system is tuned with incredible precision and operates with utmost clarity every second. We have prepared for an encounter with the unknown far better than ever before in history. Scientists compiled long lists of potentially habitable star systems with great enthusiasm. We methodically and persistently pointed all the massive antennas available on Earth in that direction. Hundreds of scientific institutions across the planet synchronized their highly complex observations. People sincerely believed that the boundless universe resembled a vast, densely populated, luminous city. The anticipation of the first long-awaited signal became the main purpose of life for many astrophysicists. This blind confidence was based on a solid foundation of indisputable and rigorous mathematical probabilities. The famous Drake equation clearly indicated the presence of a vast number of neighbors around us. Even under the most pessimistic mathematical calculations, we should not be alone. Our own civilization has developed incredibly quickly by cosmic standards. That means someone else could have traveled this difficult path long before Earthlings. We sincerely believe that radio communication was a universal and understandable language of the entire universe. Any advanced intelligence inevitably turns to the active use of the electromagnetic spectrum. It is the simplest and most logical way to communicate over such vast, daunting distances. That is why our antennas were tuned to listen around the clock to this obvious physical band. We waited patiently and joyfully for the first meaningful alien sound to come through the speakers. But the familiar and very understandable picture of the world began to crumble rapidly before our eyes. The massive data sets we had accumulated stubbornly showed completely impossible and terrifyingly negative results. With every new scan of the sky, our former confidence melted away without a trace. The universe categorically refused to behave as our formulas had confidently predicted. It became perfectly clear that we had stumbled upon something terrifyingly fundamental. Instead of the expected cosmic noise, we hear an absolutely deafening and dead silence. This vast radio spectrum is terrifying in its incredible purity and utter emptiness. The most sensitive instruments on Earth detect only the primordial background noise from the Big Bang. The collected data does not merely contradict the theory, it completely and ruthlessly destroys it. It is as if we are shouting into a dark and cold room from which absolutely all sounds have vanished. This silence is nothing like the ordinary, mundane absence of artificial transmissions. It seems too perfect and incredibly uniform for the natural chaos of the living cosmos. It's as if someone or something is deliberately cutting out all extraneous radio waves from space. Natural physical objects like young stars and pulsars sound natural and very loud, but anything that might have an artificial, intelligent origin seems to be roughly erased with an eraser. We methodically point our sensors at those very ideal and beautiful Earth-like exoplanets. There must be sources of at least faint radiation or slight thermal noise there. However, modern orbital telescopes see only a sterile physical environment devoid of intelligent traces. Such a total absence of any signs of activity simply defies scientific logic. It directly and blatantly contradicts all the basic laws of probability and astronomical statistics. The more sophisticated and precise our telescopes become, the quieter it gets around us. We used to naively console ourselves with the thought that our old instruments were simply too insensitive. We sincerely believed that alien signals were simply lost without a trace against the backdrop of magnetic interference. Now, we have combined networks of powerful radio telescopes the size of an entire planet. But this unprecedented new clarity only amplifies our oppressive sense of loneliness many times over. At first, many astrophysicists blamed the failures on possible hidden defects in the new, complex equipment. For months on end, engineers tested algorithms and calibrated the ultra-sensitive sensors on the orbital stations. They regularly aligned the antennas with Earth-based space probes to check the quality of the connection. It turned out that all the highly complex equipment was working absolutely flawlessly and without the slightest distortion. The problem was definitely not hidden in our receivers, but in the vast universe itself. The data collected over many decades paints a very alarming and incredibly clear picture. Deep, dark space behaves as if a giant silencer were operating within it. This invisible system purposefully suppresses any suspicious activity across a wide radio frequency range. We cannot even detect random fragments of information or faint stray navigation signals. Someone is very effectively and systematically hiding the traces of their presence from outside observers on Earth. Imagine yourself in the very center of a huge and incredibly densely populated modern Earth metropolis. You can clearly see hundreds of cars speeding through the streets around you. You can clearly make out the faces of people who are actively and emotionally conversing with one another. Yet at the same time, you find yourself in a stark vacuum of absolute and terrifying dead silence. It is precisely this absurd scene that our scientists are now observing with fear in the depths of space. We have thoroughly studied the massive centers of galaxies with their supermassive and ancient black holes. There, monstrous physical energy bursts occur, clearly visible from the other end of the universe. Scientists had high hopes of finding traces of super-civilizations with the highest level of technology there. Such incredible civilizations must be actively drawing energy from these colossal galactic nuclei. But even through this most powerful radiation storm, we hear no signs of intelligence. The discovery of this eerie fact completely shatters our conventional understanding of the structure of the physical world. Modern human science simply does not know of any natural processes with such a selective filter. Ordinary hydrogen gas clouds are incapable of absorbing all radio signals so perfectly. Radio waves should always pass freely through such insignificant and loose interstellar barriers. There must be some entirely different, overarching cause for this total cosmic information blockade. Puzzled researchers are forced to urgently construct new and frankly frightening scientific hypotheses. The familiar, benevolent theories about friendly and open-minded aliens are rapidly losing all relevance. They are inevitably being replaced by grim conjectures about great barriers and hidden threats. The scientific community suddenly found itself on the brink of the most massive crisis in the planet's history. We began to clearly understand that the surrounding reality harbors a gigantic, unknown danger. And here the overall situation begins to rapidly spiral out of any reasonable control. This impenetrable, dense wall of silence is by no means a local anomaly in our small sector. It is consistently detected in the databases of absolutely all major global observatories. Different and completely independent telescopes simultaneously record the same terrifying result. With growing, chilling horror, scientists begin to realize the true, monstrous scale of this problem. We desperately tried to peer far beyond the boundaries of our familiar and cozy Milky Way. Astronomers resolutely pointed their best instruments at the neighboring Andromeda galaxy and other distant clusters. The results of these long observations turned out to be even more grim and devastating to our fragile psyches. In other massive galaxies, the exact same global suppression of radio signals is at work. This ominous silence tightly envelops millions of light-years of utterly empty intergalactic space. In search of long-awaited answers, we changed operating frequencies and observation methods hundreds of times. Researchers diligently switched from radio waves to optical and complex invisible infrared spectra. We searched for powerful directed laser flashes and thermal signatures of gigantic cosmic megastructures. It seemed that all we needed to do was simply switch instruments to achieve a monumental scientific breakthrough. But this invisible barrier works perfectly and flawlessly at absolutely every level of observation. Infrared orbital sensors categorically fail to detect excess heat from massive alien manufacturing facilities. Powerful optical telescopes do not register the rhythmic flashes of light from directed laser beacons. No artificial, meaningful signal can penetrate this dense fabric of cosmic void. All our incredible earthly technical ingenuity crashes against an insurmountable wall of absolute silence. The problem is rapidly and inevitably taking on a truly universal and frighteningly irreversible massive scale. With every new, incredibly expensive study, the extent of our misunderstanding of the universe only grows steadily. Leading global astrophysicists have definitively rejected the comforting theory of a random malfunction in complex equipment. This is an extremely frightening systemic pattern that is deeply embedded in the very basic structure of the cosmos. This mysterious phenomenon effectively blocks any attempts at communication across vast interstellar distances. No modern physical theory is capable of logically explaining such a large-scale and uniform anomaly. In search of the truth, scientists began reanalyzing the dusty archives of decades past. They carefully dug up old records from the very first, clumsy radio telescopes of the mid-20th century. It turned out that clear signs of severe suppression of the ether had been consistently present there from the very beginning. It's just that back then, no one paid them the proper, close scientific attention they deserved. In those carefree years, we naively attributed this flat, dead background to poor equipment. Now, with blood-curdling horror, we realize our most fatal mistake of the past century. No matter where we cast our gaze into the night sky, we inevitably hit a brick wall. The ether surrounding us has been cleared to such an unimaginable degree that it is causing genuine global panic. This completely and fundamentally contradicts the nature of a turbulent, chaotic, and ever-changing universe. We are face to face with a phenomenon that we are simply physically incapable of comprehending. To successfully suppress signals across such vast territories requires truly incredible, absolute power. This is colossal energy that easily and many times over exceeds the capabilities of thousands of combined star systems. We know of no natural physical processes of such an unimaginably high order. This lies completely and unconditionally beyond the grasp of all our modern Earth-based science. Physicists are forced to urgently re-examine the most basic laws governing the structure of our vast material world. Extremely bold theories are being put forward about the hidden properties of physical space and time itself. Theorists speak at length about multidimensionality and the absorption of electromagnetic waves by strange quantum fluctuations. But no complex hypothesis explains the frighteningly strange selectivity of this invisible filter. Natural, chaotic noise from old dead stars passes through to our antennas with incredible ease. Only those structured signals that might contain any meaningful information are strictly blocked. If our worst fears are true, then the situation is completely beyond human control. This means that someone incredibly powerful is deliberately maintaining this strict regime of dead silence. Or there is an absolutely ruthless law of nature of which we are completely unaware. Both options sound extremely alarming and very depressing for our entire species. We have come up against an absolutely insurmountable and rigid limit of our modest human knowledge. This problem very quickly ceased to be a subject of heated debate only among armchair theoretical physicists. An error in rigorous calculations over gigantic distances implies an error in all the fundamental foundations of science. Our own solar system is impeccably subject to the very same rigid rules of the universe. We are an integral, tiny part of this locked-in and frighteningly isolated cosmic system. Such a discovery completely and permanently changes our understanding of our own safety on planet Earth. Scientists are now asking the most logical question about the future fate of our own terrestrial radio transmissions. We have been broadcasting into open space with incredible carelessness for over a century without the slightest interruption. Our military radars and powerful television towers constantly emit radio waves in all directions. But perhaps all these signals die without a trace, just beyond the boundaries of our solar system. An invisible cosmic barrier may absorb our loud cries just as effectively as those of others. In light of these indisputable facts, the most terrifying question of all arises. Scientists are desperately trying to understand the true motives behind such a grand and powerful cosmic filter. If the silence is artificially maintained, then who would need to expend colossal interstellar resources on it? Perhaps this shield carefully protects us from something terrible in the utterly dark abyss of space. Or perhaps a higher intelligence is simply isolating us with disgust, as if we were a highly dangerous biological infection. For many long and peaceful years, our greatest fear was finding ourselves utterly alone in the entire universe. The prospect of life's uniqueness terrified many philosophers with its incredible emptiness and the meaninglessness of existence. We searched desperately, and for a long time for fellow sentient beings to exchange great knowledge and technologies with. We wanted to share equally with them the heavy burden of cosmic loneliness as the only intelligent species. But now we clearly understand that reality could be far worse than complete, total loneliness. The vast Milky Way may literally teem with intelligent life forms on neighboring stars. However, all these ancient, highly advanced civilizations are hiding from one another in utter panic. They are forcibly and harshly silenced by something that infinitely surpasses them in level of development. Our ambitious future as a highly successful spacefaring species has suddenly come under a massive threat. Bright dreams of distant galactic voyages may turn out to be deadly illusions for us. Humanity has always naively dreamed of peaceful contact with benevolent alien neighbors in the galaxy. We sincerely plan to one day leave our planet and boldly set out for distant twinkling stars. Now these plans seem incredibly foolish and utterly suicidal for our entire young species. We have absolutely no knowledge of the harsh rules by which this ancient, merciless cosmos operates. Our carefree and childlike openness could easily lead to our swift and complete extinction. In scientific circles, a very grim theory from science fiction, the dark forest theory, is gaining popularity. In a vast, dark forest, every hunter tries to move as quietly and inconspicuously as possible. Those careless young species that shouted too loudly have already vanished forever into the darkness. Their loud signals inevitably attracted the attention of that very punitive mechanism of brutal suppression. Any attempt to loudly assert themselves became their fatal and final mistake. We have absolutely no idea whether this cleansing force possesses its own intelligence and complex consciousness. It could be a soulless natural algorithm or the legacy of a long-dead and aggressive super-civilization. But we can see all too clearly the terrifying results of its incredibly effective and utterly ruthless work. The entire visible part of the universe is shrouded in a deathly silence, thick with an animal fear of annihilation. And this global fear has absolutely real and physically verifiable grounds. The most acute problem is that we discovered ourselves a very long time ago. Since the invention of radio, the powerful sphere of our terrestrial signals has been constantly expanding at the speed of light. We have no physical way to retrieve the electromagnetic waves we have already emitted into the darkness. If a ruthless predator truly lurks in the darkness, it surely already knows our exact coordinates. Humanity can only helplessly speculate when this inevitable threat will reach our small planet. Our former planetary security turned out to be nothing more than a sweet illusion based on profound scientific ignorance. The world's leading astronomers are now experiencing a profound professional crisis and a severe, prolonged depression. What once began as joyful exploration has turned into a global and very well-founded paranoia. We have realized our absolute biological vulnerability in the face of this colossal and dark cosmic unknown. Our former scientific optimism has been permanently replaced by a cold, clinging, and inescapable existential horror. There is another, even more humiliating interpretation of our many years of space observations. Scientists have been seriously and extensively considering the so-called cosmic zoo hypothesis, or strict planetary isolation hypothesis. This global, overwhelming filter may be set up exclusively against us and our home planet. It is vitally necessary to reliably isolate humanity from the rest of the advanced galactic community. We may be under strict quarantine of a scale that is gigantic and absolutely insurmountable for our technology. This invisible, impenetrable information barrier may lie right at the edge of our solar system. Higher intelligences erected this robust barrier long before the first intelligent humans appeared. They deliberately and meticulously prepared a safe, isolated zone for the development of an unpredictable biological species. Our planet has become a kind of testing ground for this grand experiment. The observers made sure that we could not leave the confines of our system under any circumstances. This is very similar to how we ourselves handle dangerous and completely unknown viruses. Epidemiologists securely place the pathogen in airtight boxes with thick, impermeable laboratory walls. We artificially and strictly cut off any possibility for bacteria to interact with the vast living world outside. Their entire small, confined universe is forever reduced to the size of a transparent glass flask on a table. Scientists study their behavior with extreme care, without directly interfering with the natural process at all. What if someone incredibly powerful applied exactly the same cold and pragmatic logic to us? To ancient super-civilizations, all of humanity is a classic example of an extremely aggressive virus of destruction. Hidden alien observers are simply waiting to see how quickly we can completely and assuredly destroy ourselves. They feel neither burning hatred nor deep compassion toward us. It is purely scientific interest in wild nature, completely detached and impartial. Our own brief history on Earth is filled with endless bloody wars and massive ecological disasters. We have not yet learned to live in peace even on our own home planet. Each new human generation invents ever more sophisticated and terrifying methods of mass destruction against its own kind. Our moral qualities are simply lagging catastrophically behind our rapid technological progress. Technological development is proceeding much faster than the spiritual growth of society as a whole. To any truly wise civilization, we look like an armed, dangerous, and unpredictable wild monkey. Who in their right mind would want to let savages with powerful nuclear missiles into their orderly home? It is entirely logical and safe to securely lock away such a species until its complete and final evolutionary maturation. The galactic higher intelligence is simply waiting for us to outgrow our innate, primitive, and uncontrollable aggression. Until that very distant moment, any open contact with Earth is strictly and unconditionally prohibited. This quarantine theory perfectly explains why the barrier functions so mathematically flawlessly and precisely. It allows starlight to pass through unimpeded and easily, maintaining the complete illusion of a normal, vast physical world. Astronomers are completely free to admire the birth of beautiful new galaxies and vast gas nebulae. Optical telescopes show us a stunning picture of boundless space every clear night. Nothing prevents us from endlessly enjoying this magnificent visual spectacle, but this powerful filter completely blocks any information capable of significantly accelerating our technological leap. The invisible wall functions flawlessly as a perfect and uncompromising intellectual insulator for humanity. We are deliberately and strictly prevented from peeking at ready-made answers in others' technological drafts. Any technical hint from the outside would inevitably lead to the creation of even more terrifying weapons of mass destruction. Therefore, all radio frequencies remain completely empty across all bands available to us. We are mercilessly left to fend for ourselves on this small and lonely blue planet. Humanity will have to traverse this entire arduous path of understanding the laws of complex physics entirely on its own. No one will arrive in massive ships to bestow upon us technologies of infinite energy or cures for all diseases. We must learn to cope with our global problems and internal crises on our own. Only in this way can we form a truly mature civilization that will be fully prepared for the long-awaited contact. In that case, our massive, sensitive radio telescopes are nothing more than cold and utterly blind mirrors. They merely passively reflect our own informational void and profound evolutionary cosmic loneliness. We constantly and painfully bump into the walls of our fishbowl, naively thinking that this is the edge of the universe. Engineers build increasingly complex antennas, but they continue to pick up only the dead silence of the void. It is very much like trying to hear beautiful music in a perfectly soundproofed room. Our proud Earth-based science intently studies only that part of reality we've been allowed to see. We write thick textbooks and receive prestigious awards for discoveries within our little pen. And behind this gigantic screen, real, complex, and incredibly bustling interstellar life may be boiling. There may well be vast transport corridors and powerful federations of peaceful, highly developed planets. Thousands of civilizations may exchange colossal amounts of scientific and cultural data on a daily basis. This is a vast and incredibly beautiful life, to which we are categorically denied even the slightest access. This thought deals a crushing and deeply painful blow to our collective sense of our own unique significance. On the scale of such a global quarantine, we are merely a petty, annoying, and isolated local problem. The higher intelligences treat us not as equal partners, but as an annoying minor nuisance. We are simply coldly and perpetually ignored, with a reliable barrier established in the empty cosmic space surrounding us. Perhaps our native Earth is not the glorious cradle of reason at all, but a reservation for savages. We are under round-the-clock and completely imperceptible surveillance by the most sophisticated control systems in the galaxy. The Watchers passively and patiently await the natural resolution of our internal systemic crisis of survival. They have absolutely no need to use force against us or resort to open violence. The primary and most terrifying weapon in their mighty arsenal is infinite patience and absolute isolation. If we are certain to destroy ourselves in the flames of nuclear war, the barrier will simply be deactivated forever. The planet will gradually clear of radiation, and the quarantine zone will once again become a normal part of the vast galaxy. Our history will become just another failed and forgotten example in the vast encyclopedia of dead civilizations. None of the higher beings will even shed a tear over our sad and foolish fate. They will simply record the results of the experiment with indifference and move on to observing the next planet. If, by some miracle, we overcome our vices, perhaps one day we will be officially released into the vast, open cosmos. We will have to prove through our actions that we have learned to control our primal instincts forever. Only by fully uniting the planet and ending wars will we be able to earn the right to first contact. Then, the invisible wall will fall, and we will finally hear the voices of thousands of other intelligent worlds. But for now, this silence will remain utterly deafening, unyielding, and terrifyingly endless for Earthlings. There is another chilling dimension to this grand and soul-chilling cosmic unsolvable mystery. What if the very basic structure of our reality is not actually dense physical matter at all? The barrier of silence may ultimately turn out not to be an external quarantine shield made of unknown force fields. Scientists are beginning to seriously discuss a completely different, purely informational nature of our entire vast universe. We may well be living inside an incredibly complex and perfectly calculated giant computer simulation. This theory, which seems crazy at first glance, has a very rigorous and serious mathematical foundation. The computing power of our Earth-based computers is growing every year at a massive and frightening geometric rate. If we are already creating virtual worlds ourselves, then a more advanced intelligence could have gone much further in this regard. Some ancient super-civilization could have easily created a perfect virtual copy of the entire vast universe. Soon, modern virtual reality technologies will be virtually indistinguishable from the real physical world. This astonishing fact brilliantly and simply explains absolutely all of our unsolvable astronomical and quantum paradoxes. The great silence of the ether immediately appears to be program code, rather than a wild natural cosmic phenomenon. The signal blocking operates with the precision of an incredibly well-tuned and tested machine algorithm. Ordinary physical nature simply cannot create such uniform barriers across gigantic interstellar distances. Stars simply cannot hide their radio signals so synchronously throughout our observable universe. The universe constantly and very clearly demonstrates to us continuous inconsistencies at the deepest levels of observation. Physicists regularly encounter incredible limitations when studying the smallest particles of dense matter. The quantum world behaves as if its properties are only defined at the moment of observation. The background microwave radiation of the early universe contains enormous cold spots of absolutely perfect geometric shape. According to the strict laws of conventional physics and thermodynamics, they should not be there at all. The suppression of radio signals looks like a desperate and crude attempt by the system to conserve its computational server resources. The supercomputer simply stops processing those complex processes that are not of paramount importance. Rendering thousands of other civilizations would require an unimaginably colossal amount of RAM and physical machine memory. The system would have to calculate in detail every thought of trillions of beings on thousands of different planets. This is an incredibly difficult and energy-intensive task, even for the most advanced quantum equipment. Any processor would inevitably freeze up under such a colossal and continuous stream of incoming variable data. The machine would start constantly throwing critical errors and seriously slow down the entire global simulation. Therefore, the program simply ruthlessly erases their traces to preserve the stability of the entire current operating system. It is much easier to completely remove entire civilizations from the code than to waste extra energy on their stable operation. Saving enormous computational power becomes the primary goal of this gigantic digital world. This perfectly and logically explains our ability to see distant galaxies without any active radio signals. Rendering the ordinary visible light of dead stars is incredibly easy for any powerful quantum supercomputer. It is simply a flat, very beautiful glowing texture in the farthest background of the virtual night sky. It serves merely as a cheap backdrop and requires absolutely no deep mathematical elaboration of complex physical details. The system simply displays a beautiful, bright image with a multitude of glowing points for us. The observer is simply constantly shown a starry sky to maintain the complete illusion of an infinite and vast world. We look through powerful telescopes and sincerely believe in the existence of massive gas giants and black holes. But the complete simulation of an alien mind and its incredibly complex signals creates a colossal system peak load. Every technical device and every thought requires a separate complex mathematical calculation within the software core. It's one thing to simply draw a beautiful planet, and quite another to breathe real intelligent life into it. That is why the clever control program carefully and completely mutes this sound for distant galactic background processes. As a result, all of humanity finds itself in an absolutely empty and strictly isolated little server cell of space. We sincerely and very naively believe that we are completely alone in this boundless, lifeless vacuum. Our small planet is merely a tiny fragment of data on the hard drive of a universal, super-powerful server. We are isolated not in space at all, but in a closed digital folder with severely restricted access rights. Our newest, super-powerful radio telescopes are now literally and very tightly pressed against the invisible edge of the location. In ordinary video games, users constantly and inevitably encounter the insurmountable boundary of a beautifully rendered virtual world. The player simply runs into an invisible wall and cannot proceed beyond the level designed by the developers. The Great Cosmic Silence works exactly like this basic, invisible, and impenetrable digital wall. We have simply come right up to the very edge of our designated virtual sandbox. Distant shining stars are merely beautiful flat pixels on the vast dome of our system simulation. We could zoom in on this image 1,000 times, but we would never find anything living there. And no signal will ever come from there, because physically and programmatically, no one exists there. All these grandiose spiral galaxies are actually completely empty and utterly lifeless on the inside. The Matrix has absolutely no intention of wasting precious energy on creating real worlds beyond our field of vision. In this case, the famous speed of light is not an unshakable fundamental physical law of nature at all. It is merely the maximum and strictly defined hardware data processing speed on this specific server hardware. No real object in the simulation can simply move faster than the processor is capable of updating information. And the strict suppression of complex signals acts as a reliable built-in system firewall against critical internal failures. It strictly cuts off excess junk traffic to protect the matrix from accidental total destruction. The program strictly and very effectively protects itself from information overload and fatal hardware freezes. As a result, we found ourselves permanently locked inside a very tight mathematical box with no real escape routes. We meticulously study the laws of physics, completely unaware that these are merely the strict rules of written program code. Every major scientific discovery only helps us understand the algorithms of our gigantic computer a little better. Breaking free from the confines of this predetermined computational power is absolutely and completely impossible for us. Who could have originally created this grandiose and infinitely terrifying, massive virtual computational construct? It could have been an ancient race desperately trying to escape the destruction of their real physical universe. They could have fully uploaded their consciousness into a safe digital matrix for an eternal and comfortable synthetic life. Or we are a completely random side algorithm in a gigantic laboratory run by cosmic programmers unknown to us. They simply change the basic variables of the computational environment and observe the results of our strange, brief evolution. The absolute radio silence of the ether serves only as a basic and very strict condition for the purity of the experiment they are conducting. We are strictly and categorically denied any external cues so as not to disrupt the natural course of the algorithm. Any outside interference would immediately ruin all the statistical data sets carefully collected by the creators. Therefore, the cosmic vacuum is guaranteed to remain crystal clear until the very end of this large-scale simulation. The existential horror of this discovery completely and irrevocably destroys any concept of our higher human purpose. The invisible creators do not interact at all with our very primitive and low-level earthly program code. They may simply release another patch in silence when our development spirals out of their complete control. Our overly loud attempts to contact the cosmos may be deemed a critical system error in the current simulation. The antivirus system is capable of automatically and extremely quickly clearing the infected sector of unnecessary and harmful noise. A single, imperceptible small update to the base code will wipe out our civilization in a tiny fraction of a second. In such a digital world, our entire vast universe is a huge and utterly insurmountable digital cage. We stand as helpless hostages of a mathematical reality that isn't even truly living, warm matter. This is the most depressing and incredibly terrifying discovery in the entire short history of our evolving species. Our cutting-edge science has turned into a pitiful attempt to read a tightly sealed, complex book of program code. And we have absolutely no real chance of finding the correct password to this complex mechanism. we have reached the very edge of our feeble biological understanding of the vast virtual universe surrounding us. All the latest hypotheses lead exclusively to incredibly frightening and utterly hopeless, profound philosophical conclusions. Whether it's the concept of the dark forest, an artificial quarantine, or a grand and very cold computer simulation, the essence of what is happening remains absolutely unchanged for our fragile and very vulnerable young human society. We are forced to urgently reevaluate our true place in this ruthless and utterly empty dark infinity. For many years, talented writers have promised us a bright, joyful, and incredibly interesting great cosmic future. Science fiction writers vividly described the beautiful worlds of a triumphant intellect and a universal, warm, and friendly interstellar brotherhood. We were convinced that we would inevitably become full-fledged and highly respected citizens of a vast, inhabited galaxy. But harsh reality has taught us an extremely cruel, cold, and sobering historical lesson. The vast cosmos is certainly not waiting for us with open arms and kind, friendly intentions. Rather, it would prefer that we never send out our loud and conspicuous radio signal at all. The Great Silence makes it abundantly clear that there are very strict and uncompromising rules of universal survival. We are forced to silently and unquestioningly submit to this invisible dictate of an ancient force that far surpasses us. Every new telescope now brings scientists far more primal fear than bright and joyful hope. We stare intently at the graphs and are terrified of seeing the long-awaited alien response signal there. Any intelligible signal received will inevitably shatter our very familiar and warm, comfortable world. If we hear an alien voice, we will have to immediately prepare for the most terrifying and worst-case scenario. This oppressive and very heavy paranoia is gradually seeping into all modern programs for exploring deep space. Absolute dead silence has long been our curse, but it is also a very reliable protective shield. As long as the infinite cosmos remains menacingly and heavily silent, we can calmly continue our everyday human lives. Ignorance has proven to be a far more comfortable state for our fragile and evolutionarily underdeveloped psyche. People instinctively and deeply hide behind this wall of silence from global and inevitable existential threats. But our basic biological human curiosity is physically impossible to simply switch off forever. We will continue to stubbornly listen to this ominous void on every long and crystal-clear starry night. Astronomers will stubbornly and methodically search for the slightest cracks in this invisible and very sturdy barrier. Our species is evolutionarily hardwired for a ceaseless and extremely dangerous search for any hidden truth. We are driven forward by an insatiable thirst for knowledge, no matter how terrifying that truth may ultimately be. We will continue our research at the limits of all our modern technical and immense intellectual capabilities. This unquenchable thirst is both our greatest curse and our greatest historical driving force. It was precisely this thirst that once compelled us to invent the wheel and build the first powerful orbital rockets. We are utterly incapable of stopping in time halfway to unraveling the greatest mysteries of the universe. Perhaps one day we will safely reach the incredible level of the very creators of this impenetrable barrier of silence. Humanity will survive its destructive global internal conflicts and enter a completely new evolutionary stage. We will finally clearly understand why it was vitally necessary to carefully conceal our physical presence in the galaxy. And then we ourselves will voluntarily turn off all our transmitters for the sake of our own safe and long-term survival. We will quietly and with great discipline join the great and endless cosmic silence forever. This event will mark our final act of coming of age as an intelligent and highly responsible galactic species. We will forever cease to be foolish, screaming children in this dark forest full of real, deadly dangers. Humanity will learn to listen attentively to the void, without revealing its location to more aggressive galactic neighbors. Rational, cool caution will completely and forever supplant our former suicidal and naive informational openness. But until that long-awaited moment of true maturity, we remain completely alone in the black void. Our fragile blue planet flies through very cold space, surrounded by an invisible and impenetrable wall of silence. We diligently write our long history, completely unaware of whether there are any outside observers watching us. This crushing existential uncertainty is the heaviest burden on our vulnerable collective human mind. And with each new decade, this invisible psychological burden only becomes significantly and unbearably heavier. Astronomers point powerful telescopes at the darkest regions of the sky in search of answers. One such terrifying mystery is the giant void known as the Boötis Void. It is a colossal spherical region of space where galaxies are virtually absent. Its diameter spans hundreds of millions of light-years of inexplicable emptiness. The existence of such vast dead zones only intensifies our sense of profound isolation. It is extremely difficult for scientists to explain the formation of such enormous empty spaces from the perspective of classical cosmology. Next time, look closely at the twinkling stars at night with completely different, truly frightened eyes. You will never again see there the familiar, friendly, and utterly welcoming, bright, and vast world. You will clearly see a gigantic, cold enigma that deliberately and very cruelly hides its correct answers from us. This beautiful, shining dome above our heads is filled with incredible and, as yet, utterly unsolvable mysteries. The greatest of these lies in the true, fundamental cause of the endless and eerie, deathly silence of the ether. We stand in the face of a colossal threat capable of erasing our entire carefree and untroubled existence. For centuries, we sincerely believed that we perfectly understood the workings of our native physical and vast universe. Scientists were absolutely certain of the correctness of their basic mathematical formulas and rigorous astronomical laws. But now, the planet's greatest minds are fearfully admitting their complete intellectual helplessness in the face of newly discovered facts. The more intently we peer into this black abyss, the less human logic remains within it. The well-structured, modern Earth-based cosmology is beginning to crack loudly at the seams under the immense pressure of new discoveries. The real hidden truth lies infinitely far beyond the limits of our feeble biological human perception. Our primitive brain is physically incapable of fully comprehending the gigantic scale of this colossal spatial structure. Evolution has not prepared us at all to understand such complex phenomena of such a terrifying cosmic magnitude. We are like blind ants, desperately trying to understand the inner workings of a modern, enormous nuclear reactor. All that remains for us is to passively and very methodically record anomalies in the ether and formulate tentative guesses about their nature. And every new hypothesis put forward by astrophysicists turns out to be many times more terrifying than all the old scientific theories that came before. We wander in impenetrable cosmic darkness without the slightest reliable guide for our survival. Science has turned into an endless journey through a vast, dark labyrinth with our eyes tightly shut in fear. Our familiar reality has turned out to be incredibly more complex and far more dangerous than even the wildest human imaginings. Projects searching for extraterrestrial intelligence have been scanning the heavens for decades across all available frequencies. Giant radio telescopes continuously listen to space in the hope of catching at least one artificial signal. But in response, radio engineers receive only the static noise of cosmic background radiation and pulsars. This monotonous sound of dead matter is the sole backdrop to our terrifying reality. billions of dollars and countless hours of machine time have brought us nothing but absolute silence. The absence of results has itself become the most significant and terrifying scientific discovery of our time. Something truly incredibly powerful is deliberately blocking meaningful signals from deep and very cold space. We still have absolutely no idea why this strange filtering process is happening right around us. Perhaps it is better for us never to learn this truly terrifying and deadly truth in our lifetime. Some of the universe's most terrifying secrets must remain forever securely hidden in the darkness of the deepest vacuum. Any premature knowledge could ultimately destroy our civilization from within with its monstrous and inhuman logic. Every day, we continue to methodically send fragments of our digital legacy and bright hopes into the void. Our radio waves scatter rapidly in all directions, carrying detailed information about weak and lonely humanity. We act as a bright beacon shining into thick fog without the slightest understanding of the situation. Alien ships may well be sailing right by, skillfully concealing their thermal and optical signatures. They clearly see our bright light, but prefer to remain in a safe and very comfortable shadow. The silence of the universe is not merely a banal absence of sound, but an active and very aggressive physical force. It weighs heavily on our antennas, with a force that cannot be measured by ordinary earthly instruments. This invisible pressure makes us doubt our own adequacy and the correctness of the path we have chosen. We find ourselves locked in a vast cage, whose bars are made of pure mathematics and absolute emptiness. And the most terrifying thing is that the massive door of this cage can only be opened from the outside. The Milky Way contains hundreds of billions of star systems with potentially habitable worlds. Our home star is merely an ordinary yellow dwarf on the remote outskirts of one of the spiral arms. In the observable universe, there are trillions of such galaxies, each teeming with hidden energy. The mathematical probability of the absence of other life on such a scale approaches absolute zero. Nevertheless, telescopes stubbornly show us only barren and utterly lifeless worlds. This dissonance between theory and practice is driving the leading thinkers of our time mad. Humanity stands on the threshold of the most monumental and painful shift in its collective mass consciousness. We will have to resign ourselves forever to the role of a tiny and utterly insignificant grain of sand on the shore of a dark ocean. We are no longer the proud crown of nature, but merely accidental survivors in this harsh cosmic lottery. Our pride must immediately give way to extreme caution and deep respect for the hidden forces of the universe. Otherwise, the great silence of the ether will one day inevitably become our own eternal and absolutely inevitable finale. Ultimately, absolutely every proposed solution to the Fermi Paradox promises us nothing but colossal trouble. None of the existing logical theories offers humanity a happy and very peaceful ending. If we are absolutely alone in the universe, then the demise of civilization is an inevitable and natural universal law. If space is full of aggressive, hidden predators, our complete annihilation is only a matter of a very short time. Any of these scenarios makes even the most hardened skeptic's blood run cold. We have reached that difficult stage of technological development where our illusions are beginning to crumble rapidly and painfully. Radio telescopes have permanently removed the rose-colored glasses from humanity's eyes, revealing the true and very cold face of reality. The abyss stares back at us with absolute emptiness, which is far more terrifying than any monster. We will not find benevolent mentors there, ready to solve our internal problems with a simple wave of the hand. Humanity must grow up right now, or we simply will have no bright future. All our highly ambitious projects to colonize Mars and build massive lunar bases now seem incredibly naive. We are desperately trying to expand our cage, completely unaware of the true boundaries of the quarantine imposed upon us. Perhaps one day, we will be allowed to explore our own solar system, but we will never be released beyond its rigid limits. Any ship flying toward another star could be immediately and easily destroyed by an automatic defense system. We are playing in a children's sandbox, beyond whose edges lies a zone of total and deadly cosmic isolation. Even without external interference, long-duration space flights pose a deadly threat to living organisms. Space radiation can rapidly and irreversibly damage the DNA of any human being outside Earth's magnetosphere. Microgravity critically weakens bones and muscles, leaving astronauts helpless upon returning to normal conditions. The psychological pressure of a prolonged stay in a confined metal cylinder inevitably leads to serious conflicts. Our biology is absolutely not designed for conquering interstellar space. Perhaps these physiological limitations are part of that very natural barrier. The sense of mounting global anxiety has become a constant and very heavy burden for modern astronomers and astrophysicists. They are the first to realize that the data we've gathered inevitably leads us to extremely unpleasant and depressing conclusions. Closed scientific conferences increasingly end with very long silences and heavy sighs from leading space researchers. They cannot openly and directly tell society the whole grim truth about our real and hopeless situation. People are simply not evolutionarily ready to accept the fact of their complete defenselessness in the face of a great cosmic threat. We continue to stubbornly send radio signals into the darkness, hoping for the miracle of friendly and very bright contact. Our transmissions are overflowing with immense optimism, classical music, and stories about the achievements of human Earth culture. But this extremely naive sincerity makes us the easiest and most conspicuous target in the vast, dark forest. We are very much like a child who has gotten lost at night and is crying loudly, attracting the attention of wild animals. Our cries have long since carried for dozens of light years, and someone is bound to hear this sound very soon. The dark forest theory explains the necessity of strict radio silence in the harshest terms. Given limited galactic resources, every civilization perceives another as a direct existential threat. The first to detect an alien's coordinates will launch a preemptive strike for total annihilation in the name of its own security. There will simply be no room for diplomatic negotiations or attempts to understand a neighbor's culture. In this cold game, only the quietest and most inconspicuous cosmic predators survive. We, however, have voluntarily hung a bright target on ourselves and continue to shout loudly about our presence. The famous Fermi Paradox has long ceased to be merely a very interesting thought experiment for bored theoretical physicists. It has turned into a very harsh verdict, one that has already been handed down to our young species in absentia and without appeal. The postponement of this terrible verdict depends only on the speed of light and the distance to the nearest unknown executioner. We live on credit with the vast universe, which does not forgive weakness or informational carelessness in its tiny inhabitants. Our civilization balances on a very fine line between precarious survival and complete physical obliteration. Perhaps this is precisely why we so desperately and tenaciously seek meaning in our brief biological existence. Loneliness in the universe makes us feel the incredible value of every human life on Earth much more acutely. We must cherish our small world because we have absolutely nowhere to run and absolutely no one to turn to. Saving those drowning in this endless, lifeless vacuum is a task solely in the hands of the lonely drowning people themselves. No one will arrive in a gleaming silver spaceship to save us from our ecological catastrophe or war. planet Earth has already survived 5 mass extinctions, each of which wiped the dominant species from the face of the Earth. We are now rapidly approaching the 6th extinction, caused solely by our own actions. Climate change and resource depletion could destroy us long before we encounter any extraterrestrial threat. Our technological progress is a double-edged sword, bringing us closer to the point of no return with every passing decade. We are stubbornly sawing off the branch we are sitting on, finding ourselves in the middle of a boundless, lifeless desert. Self-preservation must become our sole and absolute global religion. This frightening and cold reality demands incredible courage and a complete shift in our life paradigms. We will have to permanently abandon childish fantasies about omnipotent aliens who willingly solve the problems of backward races. We must quickly become that very wise and secretive civilization that is highly skilled at surviving in silence. Caution and patience must become our foremost virtues in the incredibly difficult centuries ahead. Only in this way can humanity preserve itself in a world where absolute silence means the continuation of life itself. Until then, we are forced to live in great anxiety, aware that our world is a global cosmic anomaly. We breathe incredibly loudly in a place where any open manifestation of life is considered a dangerous systemic error of the universe. The stars continue to twinkle coldly above our heads, guarding their dark and deadly secrets. The universe is silent, and this silence, far louder than any scream, warns us of the coming catastrophe. All we can do is timidly hope that we will manage to understand the rules of this terrifying game before it ends. The Great Silence does not forgive naive illusions and cruelly punishes even the slightest technological hubris of any kind. Our ego had been inflated to the heavens by our initial successes in conquering the near-Earth space. We sincerely considered ourselves the crown of creation, fully ready to challenge the most complex mysteries of the vast universe. Now, this inflated ego is rapidly deflating under the icy pressure of facts and absolute mathematical emptiness. We stand on our knees before the incredible magnitude of a problem that we are not even capable of correctly formulating mathematically. Every new step in our knowledge brings only additional doses of existential and very cold, primal terror. Science is no longer a safe haven from fears. It itself continuously generates these terrifying nightmares. We opened the mythical Pandora's box when we first proudly pointed a radio antenna toward distant alien galaxies. It is now absolutely impossible to close it, just as it is impossible to undo the very fact of our physical presence in this world. Humanity will have to meekly bear this heavy cross of knowledge until the very end of its very short history. The deepest despair comes from a clear understanding of our fundamental evolutionary inadequacy in the face of the vast universe. Our brains, evolutionarily designed to search for bananas and shelter, are trying to comprehend the multidimensional paradoxes of infinity. We naively try to measure the vast ocean with a short ruler, sincerely wondering why we can't get anything right. Perhaps we are simply biologically incapable of grasping the true scale and purpose of this grand cosmic production. We will forever remain a blind crowd, unaware of either the script or the names of the show's chief directors. If the simulation hypothesis is entirely correct, then all our fears and painful experiences are completely meaningless. Program code cannot experience real pain. It merely imitates complex emotional reactions of an algorithm with great skill. Our love, hatred, and yearning for the stars are merely predefined mathematical parameters of the current version of the program. This completely devalues many millennia of human earthly culture, art, and arduous spiritual struggle. We are simply powerless lines of code, terrified of being deleted during the next global system update. If, However, the universe is entirely real, then it is the most brutal arena for a battle of the species. The dark forest shows absolutely no mercy to those who cannot hide well and maintain absolute silence. We have already made a fatal mistake by marking our position on the map with a bright, pulsating spot of radio signals. Now we can only stubbornly build bunkers and hope that experienced hunters will pass by our humble planet. But Earth's long history shows that predators very rarely miss a chance to destroy a potential threat in its infancy. The Fermi Paradox is not just deeply frightening, it completely robs us of hope for a bright and endless tomorrow. Every logical solution to this paradox is extremely bad news for all of modern, vulnerable humanity. We are either completely alone and utterly doomed to extinction, or surrounded by enemies and equally guaranteed to be doomed. A third option, involving peaceful and friendly coexistence, simply does not physically exist in the harshness of nature. The universe has turned out to be too cramped and too dangerous to openly share resources and knowledge with our neighbors. Astronomers continue their long watch, but their eyes are filled with irreversible sadness and deep scientific sorrow. They gaze into modern telescopes as if into an abyss that has been staring intently back at them for a very long time. Every shift spent staring at flickering monitors turns into a form of psychological torture, an anticipation of the inevitable and terrifying end. They are terrified of seeing a signal confirming the presence of the executioners, but they fear the continuing eerie silence just as much. This torture of uncertainty is very slowly driving the most outstanding thinkers of our incredibly complex time mad. We have found ourselves locked up as hostages of our own planet, with not the slightest realistic chance of a successful escape into deep space. Earth has transformed from a very cozy cradle into a death row cell, where we meekly await the execution of an incomprehensible sentence. We know neither the date nor the exact method by which the vast universe will decide to rid itself of us. All we can do is continue living, desperately trying not to think about what hangs over our heads. But the starry night sky reminds us harshly every night of our insignificance and absolute defenselessness. The philosophy of cosmic loneliness must necessarily become the foundation of our new worldview and new culture. We are obliged to urgently rethink all our values in light of this global and inevitable existential threat. Strife and petty earthly conflicts instantly lose all meaning in the face of a silent but very real executioner. Humanity must unite not for the sake of conquering distant stars, but for the sake of survival in the pitch-black cosmic darkness. And only then will we have a microscopic, yet very real chance of surviving this long night. Reality is absolutely not what we naively and all too carelessly imagined it to be in the last century. It shows absolutely no mercy for weakness, foolishness, or overly loud cries of joy in the utter darkness. The universe is menacingly silent, and this is the most eloquent and terrifying warning of all possible in the physical world. This silence is a harsh verdict for all those who are completely incapable of listening and drawing the right conclusions. And this silence will last forever, irrevocably swallowing our fears, our hopes, and our final radio signals. Summing up our many years of utterly fruitless searching, we inevitably arrive at grim conclusions. All our vast scientific knowledge has proved completely powerless in the face of the phenomenon of the great cosmic silence. We have encountered an absolutely insurmountable barrier that harshly and permanently limits our further understanding of the world. Humanity has found itself firmly trapped in a conceptual trap from which there is currently no visible way out. And the most terrifying aspect of all this is that we have absolutely no control over this frightening situation. Every proposed solution to the famous Fermi Paradox carries a colossal threat to our biological existence. If we are absolutely unique, then we bear the unbearable burden of preserving the spark of reason in the void. In such a bleak scenario, our slightest mistake will inevitably lead to the complete disappearance of intelligence in the universe. If, on the other hand, we are not alone, then we are tightly surrounded by deadly and incredibly elusive enemies. Both of these options completely rob us of any hope for a safe and carefree future among the stars. The idea of a dark forest forces us to live in constant, panicked fear of any careless, loud sounds in the ether. The idea of a cosmic zoo severely undermines our dignity and reduces us to ordinary laboratory test subjects. The virtual simulation hypothesis completely devalues the very essence of our physical and profound spiritual existence. None of these complex theories offers us a sure path to long-awaited and happy salvation. We are simply doomed to choose between various forms of existential horror and our complete cosmic insignificance. Huge terrestrial radio telescopes continue their complex work, but their mission has already irrevocably changed its meaning. We are no longer searching for distant friends. We are desperately trying to feel out the contours of a hidden and very dangerous threat. Every scan of deep space is very much like a long walk through a minefield, with our eyes tightly blindfolded. We are terrified of the day when the sensors finally pick up an artificial and very powerful signal, because that signal could be the very last thing our very self-assured Earth civilization ever hears. Our former carelessness in sending radio signals for so many years now seems like an unbelievable and criminal historical folly. For decades, we desperately drew attention to our vulnerable planet, without giving the terrible consequences a second thought. These radio waves are now absolutely impossible to stop. They stubbornly continue their fateful journey through the dark vacuum. We have hung a huge, glowing target on ourselves, clearly visible many light years from here. All that remains for us is to wait passively and submissively for predators to turn their attention to this bright bait. Reality always harshly punishes those who stubbornly refuse to understand the rules of the game in this vast universe. We are about to undergo a very difficult process of reevaluating all our human values and global goals. We must urgently learn to be cautious, secretive, and fully prepared for any interstellar unforeseen danger. The era of naive, romantic exploration of the vast cosmos has forever reached its logical and inevitable conclusion. A very difficult time of cold calculation, total paranoia, and an endless struggle for the survival of the species is upon us. Perhaps it is precisely this global and unifying fear that will finally compel us to unite in the face of a universal threat. Endless internal earthly conflicts seem incredibly trivial compared to the abyss that surrounds us. We must immediately direct all resources toward creating defense systems and perfect camouflage for our planet. We must absolutely become quiet and inconspicuous so as not to attract the attention of cruel and powerful cosmic forces. This is the only logical path for a young civilization that has realized its vulnerability in a vast world. The great silence of empty space must become our primary and most rigorous historical teacher. It has taught us a very painful lesson in humility, one we have stubbornly refused to learn for many centuries. We are no longer the masters of the universe at all, but merely very timid guests in a foreign and incredibly dangerous house. And as polite guests, we must behave as quietly and carefully as possible. Otherwise, the invisible, ruthless masters of this vast house will very quickly and brutally show us the door. The night sky will never again evoke the same bright feelings in us. It has forever become a gigantic and terrifying reminder of our weakness and our deepest existential loneliness. Every shining, cold star holds a mystery that we would be better off never solving. We gaze into this terrifying black infinity, and it stares back at us with icy coldness. In this strange standoff of prolonged gazes, we are clearly the losing and incredibly weak side. Reality has indeed turned out to be completely different from what we always imagined with such pride and carefree confidence. The universe is full of silence, but this silence sounds much louder than any alarm sirens we know. It warns us that the cold cosmos forgives no mistakes and absolutely no informational weaknesses. All that remains for us is to meekly accept this harsh truth and desperately try to survive against all odds. And this will be the most difficult and very long ordeal in the entire history of our human species.